What is up, everyone? Welcome to the Game Week 31 Wildcard video. My name is Ryan from the Football Chatbox. If you're new, welcome. Welcome to the Football Chatbox community. Feel free to ask any questions. If you're on a wildcard as well, put your draft in the comments and ask any questions you want with regards to that as well. And I will answer every single one of them that are in the comments. If you enjoy the content, hit the like button as well and subscribe if you are new. Now, let's get straight into the video. Okay, so Wildcard 31. Now I'm going to make a slightly custom template which you will probably have to build on depending on what your chip plans are. Whether you're free hit 34 or bench boost 34, or whether you're free hit 37 or bench boost 37, or whether you just don't have any other chips after this and it's just wildcard left and you're looking to wildcard, or if you're looking to even triple captain in 34 or 37, somewhere around that time. So it all depends on what your plans are, but hopefully this will try and help you, and I'll try and give you a few ideas of what kind of players could change based on the whole plan and strategy and all of that. So let's start off with a template. We've got Neto and Petrovic in goal. Bradley, Gabriel, Nuri, Son, Salah, Palmer, Saka, Solanke, Haaland, Darwin, Eze, Richards, and Branthwaite. And I have no money in the bank. Some of you might have money. Some of you might not even be able to achieve this squad. So we'll consider like alternative options for sure. Now, this one is a basic draft that in 34, at least, with a few transfers and whatnot, you should potentially have... I don't know. Let's see. You could potentially have 11 players doubling just based on this draft in 34. If you don't have any like chips left, obviously things will have to change around because you would get rid of Son. Most probably you'll get rid of Son. Maybe Bradley will no longer be an option, so you'll probably look to remove him. So there will be a few hokey moves depending on whether you're free hitting or bench boosting in this week. If you're bench boosting as well, maybe it's a possible bench boost, like you sell Son for some other maybe another Arsenal player potentially, because you don't have triple Arsenal in here. You could, if you had to sell Bradley, you could sell Bradley and Heung-min Son and get another Liverpool player. So there are a few various alternatives that we could do. But for now, at least, this is a very template draft. Now, few things to consider. Let's say, for example, you're free hitting in 34 and bench boosting in 37. Now, if you're free hitting in 34, you probably wouldn't want an Nuri or any of the Crystal Palace players because 32 and 33, they have tough fixtures against both City and Liverpool. So you're not going to go and get them. You're most likely going to get like, let's say you're free hitting 34, bench boost 37. You're going to go and get a few more, let's say, Newcastle players, the likes of an Anthony Gordon, who is at the moment red carded, so he's not available for 31. So he's probably a move maybe for 32. Potentially, but you could also actually just get Gordon and bench him this week. There's no real reason to spend a transfer trying to get him later. You can just keep him in your team on your wildcard and just bench him this week. You'll most likely look to have an Isak over, let's say, a Solanke even, or even over Darwin Núñez, depending on your budget, obviously. You would also potentially not have triple up in attack. You could have, for example, let's say now, obviously I am 0.6 short. Some might be able to achieve this, some might not be able to. Instead of having Gordon, maybe you just go and have Garnacho for now, right? If you're struggling on budget, something like that. If you're obviously if you're free hitting 34, then okay, so you can get rid of Richards as well. Richards can go, Nuri can go. You would want players who potentially double in 36 and 37. Now, unfortunately, Gusto is injured with a hamstring, so he is ruled out of our defensive options for the moment. We don't know what his injury status is and how long he's going to be out for. Maybe you go and get a Chelsea defender, but Chelsea defense, can we trust them? Like, the only reason Gusto we were looking at it was because he was an attacking fullback. Chelsea don't really keep clean sheets per se. So maybe you probably look at someone else potentially, but still with the double. Apart from Palmer, I don't really know who else exactly I want. So we have Petrovic. So you don't really want another Chelsea defender when we have Petrovic in goal. From Spurs side, maybe you get another Spurs player. To be honest, that could actually be an option. You could get a Richarlison. Only problem is he hasn't really got into the team just yet. And I think Brennan Johnson, even though Brennan Johnson came on as a sub, he changed the game for Spurs, and I think he's a very good differential option who could come in, to be honest, for how much is Brennan Johnson? 5.8. If you had the money and could get Johnson instead of Garnacho, I would actually probably think about it, of getting Johnson instead of Garnacho. The other alternative would be to remove Ent Nouri and try and get a Brighton defender, even though the fixtures in 37 aren't the best. Who else? Maybe you go for a United defender, because they've got some decent 35 and 36 fixtures. 34 is also pretty good. United defense, I think, should improve. I know, yes, it hasn't been great. They've got absolutely battered against Brentford, but it should slowly improve. And I think Dalot will be that player that you would want. The only problem is budget in this specific case. So I would probably even maybe look to play in Nuri, just because his fixtures are slightly better over Manchester United defense. But it's someone I would probably consider, even though you're free hitting in 34. Richards also, you probably want to get rid, because if you're free hitting in 34, you don't really need a Crystal Palace defender. You'll be looking for a defender who would probably play in the doubles in 37. You're looking to bench boost. And I think in that specific case, Destiny Udogi is also another alternative to that. And Newcastle defense, it's hard to tell now, because Newcastle's defense is on its bare bones and they don't seem to be improving per se. Dubravka is not really a good goalkeeper as well, so he also is not a great option. I don't know if even with the double, whether Newcastle defense is worth investing on. That's something I'm still questioning. But eventually Trippier will be a player that a lot of people will look for, but just not yet, at least in my opinion. So that is something to kind of see, because Lascelles is also now injured for the rest of the season. So there goes that budget option that you were looking for. So plenty of injuries also to kind of consider with regards to Newcastle as well. So defenders, honestly, there aren't that many good ones. Probably a City defender. I probably go for Kanji. Because Ake also came with the injury. I would initially say Ake, but he came off with the injury, so I guess Kanji would have to do instead of Ent Nouri. 4.9 City defender. Do not expect too many, I would say, clean sheets at times with City defense. Do expect rotation, however, so that is something to potentially keep in mind. And then obviously, that's basically if you're free hitting 34, bench boost in 37. Richards could go to someone else. If we know the extent of Gusto's injury, and Gusto will come back soon, then obviously Richards can go to Gusto. Any other cheap defender? I guess Timo Livramento from Newcastle could be an option. He is an affordable defender as well, Livramento. So instead of Richards, maybe. Depends on your budget. Budget is going to be a problem. It's based on how you manage it. Trying to get in the likes of Isaac, Haaland, Darwin, Saka, Salah, Son is not easy, like in a 3-4-3. I think you probably have to downgrade one of the other forwards as well. And I don't know, maybe you go for a Muniz, or in this specific situation, let's say you're bench boosting in 34. Maybe if you're bench boosting in 34, you don't go for an Isaac. You go for, let's say, now I had Solanke in there. You can go Solanke if you have the budget. If you don't have the budget, another really good option, I think, would be Mateta from Crystal Palace. This is where you go back to your Crystal Palace players. If you're bench boosting in 34, instead of Garnacho, you go back and get your Eze. So if you're bench boosting 34, something like this maybe. This also leaves with you the option of going and getting some Bournemouth players if you need to later. Now, obviously, in this one, you still have 11 doublers, and you have enough transfers if injuries happen, which we saw and most definitely happen. from the last game week, if you noticed. So your bench boost in 34, obviously you don't get Akanji, you get your Ent Nuri as an option in there. This is if your bench boost in 34. You Sun and Palmer, you could look to bench them in 34. You could also look to sell them. Sorry, if your bench boost in 34, you look to sell Sun. For the option of you can move Bradley out to some other defender at that time. And you could actually move Bradley if you wanted to a Bournemouth defender potentially. And you could switch Heung-min Son to, let's say, a Liverpool attacker, another Liverpool attacking, potentially even a Luis Diaz in somewhere in 34, or even an Arsenal player like a Havertz and Odegaard. You could move Son to Havertz and Odegaard in 34. You could upgrade Bradley to Virgil van Dijk if you have the money in that specific situation, right? Come 34, you could, if you have bench boosting, Son could go to, let's say, an Odegaard. Would you have enough budget? You probably might, and you maybe do Bradley to. You could also do Bradley to Trent if Trent is slightly too expensive. You might have to go Odegaard to like Havertz instead. So maybe you do Bradley to Virgil just in case. Right? You could do something like this. If you're bench boosting, which means you would also not have Petrovic if you're bench boosting. You would most likely have Rhea is ideally who you would want in this specific situation, but you can't, so you would have Pickford instead in 34 for a bench boost, which means you don't get Pickford in here, you get Pickford in your wildcard in 31. I don't mind also bench boosting with a single game week goalkeeper, to be honest. And if you're bench boosting with a single game week goalkeeper and you don't have a free hit left, so you bench boosting in 34 with no free hit left, I would go with Onana, because in 34 Onana has Sheffield United, and then you get him for the double later as well. So that's also not a bad option. Up to you, obviously, in terms of how you want to approach it. So it's a template draft. Obviously, based on your chip plans, it kind of varies in terms of who you're looking for. So hopefully this video helps in terms of at least players to consider. I'll wrap it up again just to give you a summary of players to consider. In goal, Neto, Onana, Pickford, and Petrovic. Probably the 4 goalkeepers I would most likely look at. I would have said Rhea as well, but I think Arsenal's double attack or Arsenal double defense, either I should mention. I know Tomiyasu is back and all, but I still think Kiwior is a good option. And I think he probably is first choice for the moment. So he will probably be a good, cheap Arsenal asset to consider as well. But in goal, Neto, Kelleher for the moment. If Kelleher loses his spot, then Alisson, if Alisson comes back in time. Onana, Pickford, Petrovic, and obviously Rhea will add those 7 keepers. In defense, we got Gabriel. Kiwior, like I mentioned, Saliba as well is a good option, but more expensive, so I wouldn't go Saliba. I would rather go Ben White if you're going that way. Obviously, Ent Nuri we have here, Bradley we have here. Bradley can switch to Virgil van Dijk as well based on budget. Munoz from Crystal Palace is another one. Branthwaite is another one as well in defense. And probably Livramento and Dalot are people to consider. And Gusto, you kind of need to monitor the injury situation. And then obviously midfield, Heung-min Son we mentioned, Palmer we mentioned, Saka, Eze, Olise, depending on fitness and all of that, kind of consider. Salah, Diaz from Liverpool. One to monitor will be Jota and his injury status. Come closer to game week 34. And Richarlison and Brennan Johnson as well. I think those two are also players that you kind of want to monitor and see. And then Garnacho, and I'll probably add Garnacho, Gordon, and probably Bruno Fernandes for later on. Up front, Mateta, Muniz are the cheap budget enablers. I haven't mentioned Matheus Cunha, who I think deserves a mention, but Wolves still slightly with the injuries and all. I'm not really sure how good they're going to be, but I should mention those are the budget enablers. Darwin, Solanke, Isaac are your mid-priced striker options. And then obviously Haaland is your expensive striker option. So let me know what you think about that and all the players that we mentioned. If it helps, let me know in the comments. Hit the like button, hit the subscribe button. And I was thinking of doing a team selection video today. Maybe I still might do one, or I'll do one definitely tomorrow. And we'll have a deadline stream as well for Game Week 31, 2 hours before the deadline. So hit the like button, subscribe, and I'll see you all later.